I'm pretty excited for the next Battlefield game. It's been nearly a decade, in my view, since the last great title in the franchise. That was Battlefield 1 in 2016. And I've got to say, it's been pretty hard to ignore the various leaks and gameplay drops that have cropped up on social media and Reddit in the last several months. I've really tried to keep my expectations in check. The last two titles, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 2042, they weren't the best, shall we say, and there is a lot riding on this next title. A couple of days ago, an article dropped from Ars Technica, and I'm sure, like me, it caught your attention. The article referenced several developers who chose to remain anonymous, citing various issues that Battlefield 2025, Battlefield 6, Battlefield Next, whatever you want to call it, has had during its development some issues, and it brought to light a rather lofty expectation that EA has for the game. That being the target of hitting 100 million players. And the report overall, it concerned me, so let's talk about it. Now, the report touches on lots of different areas of development for this next game, but I think the one that has alarmed most people, the headline feature, is that 100 million player target set by EA internally for the title. That target comprises, it's reported, of players from the launch of the game and for a set period of time post-launch. And it's shaping the entire development strategy of the game from what I can tell. For some context, if you weren't aware, the current franchise leading title in terms of player numbers is Battlefield 1. That released back in 2016. It was a premium title supported by a paid season pass, bringing with it 4 DLCs post-launch, and the game reportedly garnered just over 30 million players across its entire life cycle. So the next Battlefield game, the one that's in development right now, would need to triple those numbers and more to even get close to the target that EA is supposedly setting for it. And that, to me, it's quite concerning for a number of reasons. Firstly, when you have such a high player count number like that, it makes me think about the pressure that's put on individual developers and teams across all the different studios working on this next Battlefield game. We've got studios like DICE Stockholm, Ripple Effect over in Los Angeles, and Criterion here in the UK. They're just 3 of the main name studios that are working on this project, and of course there will be lots more of them. And another one of them, Ridgeline Games, was set up at the very beginning of development, and it wasn't that long ago that it was shut down during the same development process of this Battlefield game alone. And it's reported that the Ridgeline closure has left the single-player portion of this Battlefield game behind schedule by roughly 2 years. And as of spring 2025, it's the only element of the game that has not reached its alpha status, over a year late. And now other teams across EA are having to pick up the pieces for it. And in some cases, they're having to start from scratch on various elements. That makes me extremely uneasy. The pressure that developers appear to be under, it doesn't seem sustainable. And all you have to do is look across the wider gaming industry to see countless examples of crunch being applied to workers in order to meet deadlines and achieve certain goals. And that's got to impact team morale in a really big way. Applying a 100 million player target to a game in the first place, it's certainly a bold play, but then to imply that that target also needs to be achieved in a market that's dominated by other big players, like Call of Duty and Fortnite, is that not just setting yourself up for failure? You'd not have to only convince fans of Battlefield that this next game learns from past mistakes and is a true entry to the franchise, but you'd also have to convince non-Battlefield playing gamers to play the game as well. There are hundreds of millions of gamers across the world, of course there are, but there are only so many of them that want to play shooter titles. Time will tell, of course, but to me, this doesn't seem like an overly sensible target. Next up, what happens if the target isn't met? What happens if the next Battlefield title doesn't achieve the goal of 100 million players across its launch and a period after? And what is that period after launch? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Who knows? So let's just say, as an example here, that the game reaches 65 million players 12 months after launch. Which, by the way, would be an insane success if you take into account other games in the FPS space and the franchise's historical record being 30 million players on a game. Does EA see 65 million players as a failure? I mean, that's still a huge number, but is that going to impact the future support of the game? Things like seasonal updates, new maps, new weapons, new vehicles, new gadgets, new gameplay features, etc, etc. What's going to happen if you don't hit the target? Well, one thing in my head would be, like many other games that see player numbers dwindle after their initial launch, is that we'd probably see more monetization elements added to the game. And we can already see that in Battlefield 2042 with its event battle passes. And then we also see it in Call of Duty as well. Just the other day, they released that ridiculous Beavis and Butthead event with paid skins, a paid battle pass, and even more. It happens all over the place with loads of different games. If player numbers aren't at the required level, then there's definitely a scenario where decisions are made to try and recoup as much of that development cost as possible and to maximize the revenue that can be obtained from a smaller overall player base. And that also comes with potentially less creative choices across the board, more safe game design elements intended to just maximize revenue over everything else. So we might end up seeing less and less innovation, less what we Battlefield fans would call actual content, like maps and weapons, in post-launch support of the product compared to the launch of the product. Just as we see right now with Call of Duty, everything is a safe bet apart from the monetization options, which become more and more egregious as time goes on. And then it's worth thinking about what sort of impact does a 100 million player target have on the individual players themselves. Because as evidenced by me making this video, it makes me skeptical that the next Battlefield game is truly going to be a great game. I will say that the hundreds of leaked videos that I've seen on social media and Reddit over the last few months, they do appear to show a Battlefield game that understands its audience this time around and has largely been created for fans of the franchise to enjoy, with perhaps a few decisions like not locking weapons to classes being used as a compromise to open up the franchise to a new audience. It's going to make it easier for them to get into the game and have fun without feeling too restricted. But as I mentioned earlier, with a lofty player number goal like this one, I feel as though EA is trying to become like this next big thing, as well as make a Battlefield game that people might actually enjoy playing. And those two things may not necessarily go together. We've already seen the rumors of a free-to-play battle royale being used as a way to entice players to try and play the game. And I know a lot of hardcore Battlefield fans see that as EA chasing another trend, rather than staying true to the franchise roots. So what we could end up with is a game that is more bloated, yet bland overall. A game that tries to attract everyone to play it without truly satisfying anyone at the same time. According to this Ars Technica report, we're set to have a somewhat compromised single-player experience due to the shift in development and the mode not getting anywhere near close to meeting development deadlines so far. A multiplayer experience that does largely look like it's going to deliver what Battlefield fans want, with compromises made in certain areas to open it up to new audiences, and potentially a Battlefield-style Battle Royale mode that's going up against the already fully established giants of Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, and in some respects, Apex Legends. That is a lot of stuff to be packed into one game. Like I say, it's trying to appeal to a huge number of people, and at the same time, it could well end up being unsatisfying because it doesn't go deep enough in any particular area. And then there's the question of post-launch content, which is a staple for these live service games these days. Through no fault of the players themselves, who may end up enjoying this new Battlefield game, what happens when the 100 million players aren't playing the game anymore and suddenly the content just stops? Like it did with Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042. At any moment, EA could just pull the plug on support, or they could pivot in their strategy, like I mentioned earlier with the threat of increased monetization elements, and players will just be left to either continue playing a product that isn't what they want, or a product that didn't deliver on certain expectations. That's a real genuine concern for me. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm excited for this next Battlefield game, but this report has definitely planted a solid dose of skepticism back in my head. And honestly, that's probably a good thing. I've said for a long time now that I've wanted to keep my expectations grounded for this next Battlefield game, especially after Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042, which, let's be honest, they just did not deliver. there's no point getting hyped before we've really seen something truly solid. And I know there's a lot of leaks on social media, but that is still not the final product. That's just a testing version. And that's where this report really hits for me. Whether the concerns in it prove true or not, of course there's a lot of stuff in there. If you want to read it, it's linked down in the description. What's clear to me is that EA is absolutely fixated on this 100 million player goal. And from where I'm standing, it feels like that number is steering the entire direction of the game. If they don't hit that target, the game will be seen as a failure. And that kind of pressure, that can crush creativity, it can burn out development teams, and it can force compromises that ultimately hurt the player experience. So, for me, as a player, I'm starting to step back here a little bit, and I'm asking the question, is EA trying to make a great Battlefield game? Or are they chasing a market-dominating live service platform? Because those aren't always the same thing. And for the sake of the franchise, I hope they remember the difference.